All right, I think we can start. All right, I'm Kirill. I work at NVIDIA on GCC. The context here is that I started working on GCC in 2012 and have worked in different capacities, mostly on the ARM and ERC64 backends. At some time, somewhere along the road, I started reviewing patches for various reasons upstream. I've been a reviewer and maintainer of the ARM and ERC64 backends. And in my workplace, when interacting with various colleagues, the topic of encouraging more people to review code upstream always, comes up frequently. So we always want to encourage more people to review stuff. And it's been surprisingly difficult for some reason. There are a number of reasons why people who contribute to GCC don't want to review upstream patches. And there are other people who do want to review patches, but they don't really know how to do it or where to start. So initially I was going to make this as a talk, but the committee rejected and asked me to propose as a BOF. So rather than just me giving an exposition, I'll still give my exposition, but the context here is for those of you who are experienced reviewers, you don't need to be told how to do it. You have your own way of doing it, but consider how you can share that knowledge, and maybe that's a discussion point. And for those of you who are new, who are maybe considering reviewing patches, consider what is you would like to know that would help you make the step. So reasons why you might want to review patches, even if you're not a maintainer. There's quite a few of them. Like, as I said, review bandwidth is often recognized as a bottleneck in GC development. The top global reviewers, maintainers complain that if only more people reviewed patches, if only there was more input. You can get goodwill from them if you review patches. I'm sure they'll appreciate it. The code quality, this is likely to become better. I mean, of course, it depends on the quality of your review. But from the point of view of diversity of thought, if more people look at the code from different perspectives, chances are there might be something good to find there. One way to think about it is that reviews are contributions to the project in the same way like patches are contributions to the project. So you contribute something intellectual to the project. So they're not, let's say, a waste of time or energy, let's say. It's a way to build credibility in the community. You get your name out there, you comment on stuff, maybe you debate some things, help with design decisions. And I find it's fairly lightweight. Like, you can invest as little as much time as needed. Writing a patch, testing it, validating all of that, benchmarking it, that actually takes quite a long time. Skimming through a patch, forming an opinion on it, and commenting on it is actually much more lightweight. So it's an easier way to get into there, to get in it. Triaging bug reports, as Andrew knows, is also a very effective way to contribute, and I personally like to do that myself when I find some time. If there's an area that you work on in GCC, you can influence it by doing review of other code that goes in that area, so that when you end up contributing, the code may look a bit better. Maybe it's a bit more suitable to the things that you want to contribute, and also you probably have a bit more context and credibility when you discuss your own contributions in that area. And it's a way to build friends. You can review people's code. They'll be happy if you help them get their contributions moving along. You can make friends with maintainers. You can network them. It's a way to be a conversation starter when you meet them face to face in an event like Cauldron. And it's a way I use it as a way to also keep up with changes to the code base. So I work on only some parts of the compiler, but just skim reading through patches. I kind of know what the hot topics are. So if there's a new optimization path that appears, I might not be able to hack on it, but at least I'm aware that there's some new capability that might be useful in the future. And if you care about becoming a maintainer or official maintainer, then reviewing patches is the obvious path to doing it. Yep.
Does your employer give you credit for doing upstream patch review?
Mine does.
Well,
Mine does.
Well, mine does, but I guess it depends on the employer. Yeah. That's a good way. I mean, many employers these days, they appreciate open source. This is in the dark days, the bad old days. So yes, many companies that they rely on open source projects and free software projects, they consider it a good thing if you have people who are active in the project contributing to it. But I didn't want to put selfish monetary reasons. It's like you might get it, but yes, for sure.
A lot of companies that are doing it, are also pushing people to mentor, to review.
That's a valid reason for doing review.
I'll leave the microphone here.
In fact, so on the LLVM side, who I work for is Qualcomm. They're pushing people to do more reviews.
I would just point out it's an obvious path to maintain your status whether or not you aspire to the position.
Well, I believe you can refuse to become a maintainer if you really don't want to.
I don't think in GCC right now that we actually acknowledge on a particular patch or commit that it was reviewed by anyone. It's just like, yeah, I think the Linux kernel does it where they have the reviewed by line.
Yeah.
So maybe that's something we could consider.
Yeah, so it's been discussed in GCC.
So the DB project has just started doing it like 2 years ago, if I remember correctly, and I did see more reviews coming in general. After we accepted it, there's been more movements and stuff, so I think it has had a good effect in that.
Yeah. So, and for GCC, of course, at the Cauldron, we have been talking about this topic before, like every other year. And in 1 year, I guess 5 or 6 years ago, I actually started asking for adding the patch submitters reviewed by my name, email address. And when I asked them, they did that, when I reviewed patches, obviously. But that was not picked up by anyone else, so at some point I stopped it again. So we never made that any kind of policy or something.
Yeah, I remember seeing the Git log. There's a few reviewed by tags.
Yeah.
Yourself and a few others did, but it didn't catch on.
I saw one that I didn't ask for, but was, I reviewed his patch in Bugzilla first.
Yep.
And then he submitted it to the list, and then Richie reviewed it and had more comments. But he didn't add Richie's email. He just kept mine. I don't know why. So.
Yeah, but definitely we could resume doing that or probably start doing that. And I think it's an incentive to review more, to get your name out there. It always reads nicely.
And it's successful in GDB, of course.
Yeah, and glibc does it too.
So does glibc and GDB do it consistently?
glibc does.
Yep.
In fact,
does it mostly consistently,
Yeah.
except for self-approved patches.
So for glibc, I would probably say that there was an initial hesitance to review because you have to put in the reviewed by because you become accountable for it. But over time, I think we've had So we've had I think now if you look at the glibc project, you'll probably see most patches going in with reviewed by tags consistently.
I think we had a little bit of this in GDB as well, but we eventually we landed on 3 levels, which is like act, review, and approve. So like if you only read the commit message and you are a maintainer of the area, but you didn't look at the code or something like that, you just go, yeah, I agree with this, but I haven't reviewed it, and then you just give it an act. So like that, I think, settled things once we got everything settled down in that sense.
For GCC, I appreciate it once we direct. I find it fast enough. But also the maintainership structure.
One quick question, where are these mechanisms documented?
So we have it in 2 different locations in GDB. We have a quick documentation in a checklist for contributors, explaining quickly what they do. And then in the maintainers file, which is where we put all the information about contribution, and we should have a different file. We have it as well a little more explicit, a little more examples and things like that.
So why do you have different levels? Isn't that confusing?
So the idea with the levels is that you need an approved tag to push it. You cannot push it if you don't have an approved tag, or if you can push your own patches, you can also push it. But I'm gonna try and push back a little bit on that in the buff later. The rest is basically I couldn't give an approval tag for most of the patches that I review, so I would either do nothing or I give a review tag. And then for the ACK is that sometimes, a global maintainer is, so a global maintainer has submitted a very big, very complicated patch that he doesn't want to push himself. Another global maintainer goes in and goes, I don't understand this code nearly as well as you, but I read it and it kind of makes sense, ACK. And then the first one can feel more secure in approving themselves or something like that. It's kind of the thinking for it. Basically, it's a formal way to say more people have looked at this. I didn't just push this huge change by myself.
Peer review. It sounds like a lightweight peer review.
Yeah, it's a more lightweight peer review. And we also have tested tag if you have just ran the test suite, or if you have just tested the bug that was reported and say that it didn't work. It solved the problem.
So the maintainers have to give you this tag so that you know which one to use. Because in GCC currently, most of the reviews are okay, looks good to me.
Yeah, so that is, GDB used to be like that, and that was one of the reasons that I explained that it would be better to use the tags. It's like, yeah, this looks good to me, approved by. Or, yeah, I think this looks good, but I'm not good to give an approval, reviewed by. They have to put it explicitly. And if they don't, I at least myself, email them back saying, can I add your tag? And I guess which tag based on the text. And I wait for them to say yes.
Definitely resolves the ambiguity in one case that I ran into.
Exactly.
Where Jeff approved it with just changes to a comment. And I was like, is this an approval? Because I couldn't tell. There's sometimes it's ambiguous.
Yeah, exactly.
If it was okay with this change, then it's less ambiguous, but yeah.
One thing that I would like to point out is that, at least for GCC, I am not aware of a document that specifies what is okay and what is not okay in a clear form.
There isn't one.
And in my opinion, it's not okay from a neurodiversity point of view. That sort of creates situations that may be not okay for people. And having that sort of clarity that GDB offers is a great idea. So please, can we have that?
Just quickly, if GDB or also glibc say they got more reviewers by introducing that system, maybe that's incentive enough for doing the same in GCC.
So for glibc, I would say we got more reviewers, not just with the reviewed by tag, but more with empowering more people to step up and review and honoring the review. Exactly. Encourage people to actually put in the reviewed by and use the consensus model instead of the named maintainer model that GCC and GDB has. I think that is more responsible for the increase in reviewers than the tags themselves.
Could you explain how that worked?
The glibc consensus model. So we would actually point out people. There's one of them right here, and we would say, what do you think? And if they say that it's okay, we would go ahead and commit things. So that's basically encourage people who are actively looking at code, helping with testing out. Yes, yes.
I was going to say using the Forge actually helps this out even more rather than just email list. But that's just me pushing that right now because I want to push it because I want to move over to it. I think there's almost a consensus to move over to it. It's just a matter of doing it, I think.
I tend to agree. Yeah, a tool like Forge formalizes.
I think it's a great topic to discuss during these 2 or 3 days, and we should have the conversation about Forge and whether moving to that will actually improve our productivity. We need to have that conversation, regardless of what we write.
Yeah, there is.
Okay, cool.
There's like 3 or 4 of the same topic. You know, this is not the only one.
Yeah, I would just say, as someone who would like to do more GCC patch reviews, that the multi-level idea sounds like a really good way to start, because there are patches that I've looked at and tested, and it's like, this makes sense, and the tests work, but I don't consider myself personally enough of an expert to say, like, I've reviewed this, but it's like, this change makes sense to me, the code changes look reasonable, I've tested it and it works. I can contribute something that says, you know, like, here's my tested by, this makes sense to me.
I just have one thing.
So I have a bit of content on that too at that point as it happens.
I guess the reason that I don't do it more is partially it feels kind of pointless if you're not someone who can actually approve the patch. It's like, is this moving anything forward?
This is what I was going to say is that
It's not like specified somewhere that, like, hey, this is a thing that you should do, it actually does help.
I have a comment very specific. So, as someone who does exactly that occasionally for specific passes, what I tend to do is I tend to describe in detail why each piece of code is correct according to me. And so what that does is I don't have approval access. So when I do that, a maintainer who can approve gets to see the reasoning I've used, and it kind of acts, I'd like to believe it acts as a shortcut for them to, go through the code one more time and then hack it. So it does help when you run your eyes through it and say that it's okay. But if you actually describe why it's okay, it becomes even easier for maintainers to review those patches.
So I'll represent Richie because he's not here, and he keeps on pushing, everybody to do more reviews. He actually even asks me, like, let's do more reviews. Please have other people do more reviews. He's getting tired of doing reviews, and if somebody does reviews and, he doesn't, if you review a patch that's, it's not your area and that he can review after, I think he's happy with that because it makes his life a little bit less like, okay, the quality is good enough. I may be able to just approve it.
So it kind of sounds like glibc does the opposite of GDB and GCC in that if you don't get negative reviews buys, that's seen as approval.
There's an element of responsibility, of course. Like, you know if something's contentious or risky, and you want to act for something. But that's I think that's the sort of power of it as well. It's more subjective than the GDB and GCC processes. It relies more on the people involved, but then it also makes people more invested. So it's like a feedback circle there.
Yeah.
You might see like one commit could maybe break something, but you will have someone actually stepping up and fix that as well.
Yeah.
So that's what we see.
So is that better than having explicit approvals? Maybe.
So we don't have explicit approval. So the review by is an explicit approval.
Right, but
it's the question of whether the patch submitter trusts the review by to actually push the patch.
So it's the opposite.
We don't generally push without anyone commenting. Someone should comment. I think it depends on the group of people or the groups of people that are operating in that project. And therefore, blindly taking one process and applying it to another is never, it's not going to work. There are things we can learn and we can think about whether it would work,
but maybe in specialized areas or where maintainers feel comfortable with that level of delegation or that model. To say that this is the one true model for all parts of a large project would be a really hard thing to do, given the range of people who contribute to something as diverse as GCC. So I think the process needs to be measured with the project. And, you know, we've got, you can't just,
I don't mean to police here, but I think we've gone off a little bit of a tangent. We could maybe
go back to it. Yeah, I was going to say. Sorry.
Yeah, sure.
No worry.
But this does lead into this.
Yes.
It does definitely lead into this.
Yeah.
I just feel bad for him. His talk has become off.
Yeah, well, no, it's supposed to be above.
Actually, it was supposed to be
It actually is above. Yeah. That's why I didn't interrupt anyone.
It was really
Yeah.
going to be a talk, and then the committee told him, no, try it above.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm happy. So I mean, this is just my own kind of canvassing of opinion among colleagues, and that's kind of barriers I heard. That's kind of things that more junior people said that stops them from reviewing stuff. A lot of it is, I guess, psychological people stuff. They don't like criticizing strangers. They don't like if they get it wrong. It's really embarrassing because the public list is archived forever, right? You hear all these horror stories from the past about people getting unpleasant and angry, right? What if it happens to me? The reality is that it's not that bad. It's honestly not that big of a deal. It's like criticize, as long as you follow the communication guidelines and you do the you focus the code of conduct, and you're criticizing the code, you're discussing the code, not doing personal attacks. It's fine. Everyone. Most people are like professionals, or at least doing it for a job. So, people behave pretty well in GCC, in my experience. If you get it wrong in your review, that's okay. If you're a new person who's reviewing code, there'll always be a senior maintainer who will actually end up reviewing and approving it. So, you always have a fallback. GCC has a very long release process with lots of bug fixing phases, lots of CI. So. There are lots of safety nets to get stuff wrong. There is code we have the communication guidelines. So if someone starts getting abusive and getting angry at you, then they're definitely in the wrong, and there are mechanisms for you to get back up. The other maintainers will be on your side. There's someone raised the point that maybe they don't have enough experience or understanding to actually approve a patch, but they may have some comments. And that's fine. You don't actually need to approve or reject a patch. You can just say, oh, this looks dodgy. I don't understand how that looks like. You can just do the low-level fruit to start with initially. And that's all useful contributions.
Even
Sorry.
looking for documentation pattern. If there's no documentation for the thing, say it. It doesn't hurt. I've done that quite a bit, even in areas that I'm not maintaining or reviewing or anything.
Sorry.
I think it would definitely help if we can encourage people to question submitted patches, not review them, but say, I don't understand what's going on here, please could you explain it to me? And bring people in that way. Don't say, criticize this, say, ask questions about it.
And I wanted on the I don't have enough experience to make useful feedback, along with asking questions, which is how I got started doing reviews. It's something that the tags actually helped in GDB, because I heard exactly that comment before, someone saying, yeah, I look at a lot of patches, but I never have anything good to say, and I don't think that me saying I review and it looks good does anything, because I'm not a maintainer of any area. So I just don't say anything most of the time. And then with that, they get to say something. They get to say, I looked at it, it looks good. It is not approved yet. Someone else will need to approve it. And then in that conversation, we heard a lot of maintainers saying, yeah, no, if I see that and I know you enough to trust you that you did at least a decent job of reviewing, my review is going to be faster. So it actually helps me. And I see people nodding here. So yeah, like it is a thing, and it's a thing that I think the Git tags are going to help with getting over. That.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah, so I find that getting people started going from 0 to 1 is a hard step. Once you get 1 or 2 reviews, then it becomes easier to kind of self-bootstrap and motivate yourself. But yeah, the fundamental, the biggest complaint here is that I don't know what to look for in a review, therefore I don't know how to even start. So I kind of put these, I'm trying to think, what we can do to kind of put some guidelines or help those people in place. A question that I was asked is, how do I pick a patch to review if you want to start reviewing? Here's a few kind of easy rules of thumb that I follow when I pick what to review, besides the places where I'm maintainer. I'm a maintainer, so I do have to review some patches. So it's actually not hard for me to pick patches. But if you are new, if you're to see on a patch that someone is asking for your opinion, so you're entitled to go and comment it. That's for sure. If this is an area that's important to you, you might want to contribute there. So a lot of us are working for semiconductor companies that focus on a particular backend or sets of backends. So any patch to the backend, is probably a good idea for you to be aware of what it does. So you can look at that. If it's code you've written, contributed, and someone's modifying it to you, then that's a good candidate for you to review their code, even if you're not the maintainer, because chances are if you touch the code last, you may know better than anyone else. People post bug fixes, and maybe the bug is a bug that you caused. It's probably good manners to help get that fix in. There's usually a lot of analysis on the upstream, on the Bugzilla PR. You can give feedback there or on the list. If there's a feature you've been wanting and someone posts patches for it, you can give feedback, maybe give adjustments on how it can better fit your needs. If your colleagues work in the same area and they post code, you might want to review that. I'm not saying you should rubber stamp or try to, muddy the waters there. It should be an honest review. But chances are you can, you know these people personally. Maybe you can meet them in person or have your own one-on-one channel, so you can get a better understanding of what the code does. You can discuss maybe sensitive stuff offline if needed. So that will make it easier to review such a patch. As I say, I've been practicing doing speed reading of email subjects, so I kind of know generally what kind of patch is going on. So when there's a bit of flurry of auto-FDO activity early in the year, I didn't need to talk to anyone to know that that's an area that's working, because I just kind of skim read the patches and maybe the Bugzilla dumps on the main list. Some people are wizards with email filters, so they can already automatically sort it out to areas of interest. Some people use AI assistants to do it, all that. That's stuff you can explore.
So one thing with the Forge that's starting to happen.
Well, you can use tags, right?
Is tags,
yeah.
So that's another reason to go to that area. I'm promoting it in an interesting way, but yeah.
Yeah, I haven't thought about it in the Forge context, but yeah, sure. Yeah, I think that's another plus of it.
Yeah. If anybody wants to review my patches, there's a set of 11. Well, actually, it's down to 10 or 9. That removes a pass. Hide people removing things, right? Removing code. You guys removing code? Yeah. Yeah. So, sorry.
Yep. So here is me showing off my PowerPoint. So again, I got people asking, okay, so what do I start? How do I start looking at? Do I just start reading patch from start to finish, comment each line? What kind of stuff do I do? There are things. There are easy things that you can do, and you can go towards the more complex stuff. There's sanity checks. Like sometimes people post a patch and go on holiday, and they realize they haven't attached the patch. So and they're not going to revisit it because they think, oh, nobody's replying to my patch, therefore they're ignoring it. But you can short circuit that 2-week delay until a notice by saying, oh, you forgot to attach a patch. That speeds up the process. So we generally want cover letters that explain the motivation of the patch, but some people don't. They think it's self-evident, but really we should have cover letters. So some post a patch and it's not obviously part of a series that explains it. Ask for a cover letter. That's always an easy thing to do. Then there are various submission requirements, both in terms of the legalese and in terms of our reviewed rules. We need to have change logs. We have style guidelines. We have copyright assignment. Well, copyright headers. Sometimes when we fix bugs, we need to have Bugzilla PR links in the right format. So if those are missing or misformed, that's something you can comment on. I'll point out the style guidelines because it's a common sticking point. Style guidelines need to be observed, but I would recommend bundling style comments with other comments, unless you're also approving the patch, saying, yeah, this patch is okay, but adjust this. So I know that there's a significant amount of people who don't appreciate just get an email with just style nitpicks. So if you try to combine with something else, that probably is a better way around. So once you've kind of gone through these things, you can. You basically want to understand the scope and the context of the patch, like what problem is it trying to solve. So one thing Richie actually commented on last time I talked to him is he wants some confirmation that the patch corresponds to what the cover letter does, because sometimes the cover letter and the patch seem to be doing totally different things. Sorry, let's comment.
Yeah, I just wanted to say on the style guidelines, since we were talking about getting people to do their first contribution, and sometimes they're not sure about what the code does and everything, I have done several contributions in the past where I say, I cannot review the patch for technical reasons, but I noticed a couple nits, so this is what I can help. I've never seen any problem anywhere when I sent that kind of stuff. And I usually say, oh, you can hold off on sending a new version until someone does any more review. I just wanted to say that I noticed this, so that the other maintainer does not need to list those things. And
that's probably acceptable compromise.
Yeah. You should qualify saying, I couldn't see anything else, but I'm not very experienced or something like that. But yeah, I think it can be good.
Easy life hack is, if there is a Bugzilla PR linked, read the Bugzilla. There's usually quite a good audit trail there with much deeper discussion of the problem. So, really helps understand what's going on. So once you understand what the purpose, why the patch exists, what it's trying to solve, then you can actually start doing the code, reading the code review. I also like to kind of skim read the patch, see if there's a large comment blocks, because usually, some people put really good comments explaining big sections. So if there is big comment block, I'll just go read that along with the cover letter, because it helped me understand some stuff. And from there on, maybe you'll give up. Maybe you'll say the patch, I'm not maybe it's too complex after all. Maybe I don't understand fully the idea. Maybe I don't want to review it. That's okay. You can bail out here if you really don't want to. But from then on, you can proceed to do a code review, and then you can collate and give the feedback. The code review itself, of course, it's a big topic. I'm not going to teach you how to do code review. Oh, we already have conversation topics.
Have you been able to automate that graph?
I believe passionately in AI, but maybe not quite yet. It will be a big engineering effort in itself.
Another check I would add to your list, at least for a lot of patch submissions, is there a test? For anything's adding a new feature or feature that you want to test.
And documentation.
Yep.
Yes.
Well, I put those in code review, but yeah, sure.
So some of those could be automated on the Forge.
I would imagine so.
But maybe automated discourages some people from, a bot will review anyway.
Some of them are deal breakers in the sense that the patch cannot proceed or be merged until it is resolved. So if your copyright headers are wrong, then you cannot go in. If the changelog isn't there, then it has to be there. But yeah, a lot of it, we should be making these as easy as possible. Simplify the requirements where we can, automate it, add scripts that do a lot of it. Maybe Forge.io can make it all kind of a moot point.
I went to include is there a test and is there documentation and code review? Because it's one of those things that you can do without understanding the scope and context. So like, it's one of the really low effort things that you can look at without understanding everything. Is as you look, there's nothing added to the test suite. So is there a new, where is it, right?
Yep.
It's very easy.
There are exceptions when we're fixing something. Yes.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah, none of this
Stuff and then, you know, there's already a test.
Yeah, none of this is a dogma or a checklist that you absolutely have to tick to make it happen, right? You've got an urgent fix to do, sometimes you'll do it. And some places, there would not be infrastructure to put in the test. For a long time, we didn't have auto FTO infrastructure, right? So some of that needs to be pragmatic and needs to be with the judgment of to the reviewer. So
the only reason I raise it is because it doesn't have to be a part of code review.
yeah, it does. Yeah.
Yep.
I was going to ask a question. Can we turn this into a set of guidelines on the wiki or something? Because
Sure,
this
I mean,
may be a...
Well, I mean, I guess that's sort of the final point that makes it above is like, do we want to have the guidelines somewhere written up? Yes. Yeah. The question, there's another interesting question of where.
It just needs to be clear that this is not. It's like you said. It's not dogma. It's,
Yeah.
Here's what you can do if you want to help.
Well, initially, why I proposed this as a presentation, I was hoping to be recorded so that people could refer to it in the future. But it's still recorded. But yes. But yeah, this is a step in that direction, basically. The code review itself is obviously a big topic. There's lots of books written about it, software engineering best practices, university course. I'm not going to go through the whole topic of how do you do code review besides giving some guidelines that kind of worked for me. One way you can approach it, one way I think of it is you kind of start with reviewing design, then implementation, and the testing. I find design review to be the kind of the hardest, or the ones that requires the most experience, and testing to be easiest. Not the least important. It's important the same, but yeah, it's a bit easier to reply. One good practice is from Simon Tatum's blog is avoid the death of 1,000 round trips anti-pattern. So try to collate the comments into one coherent narrative reply. You remove duplicates if you must, and make one reply rather than making the comment, waiting for them to respin, then make another comment, wait for them to respin, because that's very inefficient and demotivating. One thing is worth calling out is that cover letter. We should be reviewing those as well. I mean, many other projects, I think Linux kernel as well, they put a lot of emphasis on reviewing those too. This will go in the git commit message, so we use it for archaeology, so it'll be used, in the future, people will be using this to deduce stuff about the design. So it's quite important for that to be in a good shape.
Right now, from what I understand, the cover letter does not become a git commit message, unfortunately.
The cover letter never.
Oh, mine does. My commit is too.
Not the cover letter, but the email of the summary does.
I use that interchangeably. Yes. Okay. Yeah. Whatever that's not the patch in your email, it'll go in.
For the patch set.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I refer to rationale rather than cover letter.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. I guess I meant anything that the stuff you write to describe the patch. That's not the patch.
Well, yeah, that's the issue. Is that it's not included in the git history. It's in the email history. But
Yeah. I guess I'm thinking from the pre-git times where it was just an email and it wasn't a git commit per se, but now it's all git commits, right?
The reason I raise it is because I don't remember where exactly the discussion happened, but there was a question of maybe we should have the cover letter included in git history. So maybe that's something we should be doing in the future. I think it was on IRC that we talked about it, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I tend to prefer that any significant, most significant information be in the individual messages that will become part of the git commit message. That the 0 of n, if you use that at all, should have only kind of administrivia stuff or a very, very high level overview.
Yes.
yeah.
Cool.
Because otherwise you would need to duplicate it to all the commits and you would need to see how it goes there.
So an example is I have to go back to my.
Just someone reviewed his patches already.
Yeah. No. I did have a cover letter for it, just to say, this is a good, way to get rid of, this pass, And, it's not, each individual ones were tested separately and everything. And the last one actually says basically this gets rid of the pass, so it doesn't, you don't need to repeat, the cover letter is more just like overall what it does than, what individual patches do.
We'll give the intentions of the patch sets,
Yeah.
as opposed to the actual implementation, or that's what's supposed to be.
Yes.
So I'm not sure if I understood Jason correctly though, whether he thinks that it's a good thing or a bad thing to have that 0 be included. That's why I wasn't clear on that.
Generally, just I would like as much as possible of the presentation of the rationale to make it into the Git commit message.
Right.
And so I'm skeptical of putting too much in the 0. Again, it's not dogma, but I want to be able to go back through the Git history and say why, and for there to be some information about that in the commit message.
Yeah. So if the 0 submission was automatically included in the Git commit, then you would be happy to have the summary in the.
There's no way to do that.
Well, how would you get to it too?
You can do it with merge commits, but we don't.
But we just copy it into the patch 1, like have a section of the patch 1 commit message.
Yep.
This was the cover letter. Now it's the actual patch 1.
You could do that.
It depends on what the patch is,
It's FX.
But the whole point of the cover letter is more just like general overview of what the whole thing is, not necessarily rationale.
Cover letter you don't want in the commit
Yeah.
message.
Yeah.
Like, this is my change log from this to the last series. This is the
Yeah.
testing that I've done.
Yeah.
I want to put this on the master map water. That's like
A particular way of getting around this problem is maybe patch 1 in the series contains the documentation changes, and then the what do you call it? The commit message for that is the rationale and kind of contains the stuff that might have gone in patch 0's message.
That makes sense to me, because what I was going to say is actually getting to the cover letter from, like, if you're doing git blame and to find where changes where you hit like patch n of n, how do you get to the cover letter from that patch in Git? But if it was like that, where the documentation actually has that information, then you find patch n, and then you go, okay, well now I can go to the documentation to find the patch.
The patch, the documentation might be 5 lines of code, but with a 20-line commit message, which explains more like, right now, this is how things were and what my thought processes were, as opposed to what goes in the documentation is what needs to be in the documentation forever, or at least until we change it next, kind of thing.
I guess with the patch series, it's also a question, why are you sending a patch series instead of a single patch? And sometimes some people send it just to make the patch review easier, and then they combine. And sometimes people just, one patch in the series is documentation, one patch is the actual patch, one is test suite. And I think that's kind of undesirable, because you generally want the documentation and test suite in the same patch as. So if you have more independent patches than on the same topic, then it makes sense.
I certainly agree as far as the test suite goes, because the test should be relevant to the particular patch. I think there's an argument for documentation, but also, well, yeah, because even for the documentation, if you're implementing a new feature, you don't want the documentation to point to a patch that doesn't implement the feature. I had something else, but I forget now.
So I'll just do one thing. I know we're getting outside of code review for a second. We're getting more into patch submission. But, so for LLVM, for their, basically what Match and Simplify does, what they require is they require first, no, not only that, I was not going to mention that one yet, but that they mentioned they require a test case that fit, what it currently does, that you add first. Then the patch that changes also the test suite, and so that might be another possibility, is the test case could go first with an exfil, and then you unexfil it. I'm just offering. No, I'm not disagreeing. I'm just saying that that's one of the things they started requiring, besides the live thing, is that way. No, I'm not saying we do. I'm just saying that is an idea. That's all. That's all I'm saying.
Domino's had his hand up for.
First, that's why I was like.
I'm just going to add to the thing. I mean, we're talking about the cover letter being part of the patch series. But if we did go to Forge.io, the cover letter could be as detailed as it needs to be. And we could think about having the git commit point back to the Forge.io instance, so there is a clickable link. Maybe that is something to think about as an alternative, and that may be one of the reasons to consider Forge.io. So.
From a technical perspective, Forge.io retains the information, so it can point you back to what was the. That's taken care of if you want it. I've got another concern, and it's about the avoid the death of 1,000 round trips anti-pattern. And I'm wondering, is there a limit after which it's no longer an anti-pattern, but it's a violation of the kind communication guidelines?
Well, I guess, philosophical question. I'm sure you can abuse any rule. I think the spirit of the guidelines is you should assume goodwill from the person. Yeah. At some point, I'm sure they can abuse it so much that you cannot reasonably assume goodwill at some point. But I personally have not seen it happen so badly, pathologically badly, but hypothetically, yes.
For patch reviews, I haven't seen it. For bug reports, I have.
Yeah, bug reports, bug reports you get, basically anyone from the world can file a bug report. It can be any kind of person.
Do you have any more slides?
Yeah, well, only 3.
Just to say briefly with regard to LLVM, they squash. So what Andrew was saying was with regard to review, it's not at all for what would be committed. Which changes things a little bit, I think.
Yeah, a little bit. But I don't like squash.
Yeah. Anyway, so I mean, the design review, as I said, for me is the hardest one. It requires the most experience. We have a lot of design, of course, in GCC, many components. A lot of it is documented. A lot of it is not. Some of it is implicit. Some of it is kind of documented de facto by being discussed in the GCC patches list. But getting to that discussion is not always easy. You have to do quite a bit of archaeology, and I believe we kind of restrict indexing of search engines of GCC patches. So there's a way to do it, but it's not necessarily straightforward. But some questions you can ask, by no means exclusive. If there's new APIs introduced, are they really needed? Are they duplicating what's already there? Can you already reuse stuff? If you introduce some new, hook, does that mean the components that don't use that hook, do they still keep working, or do more things need to be modified just to make use of this new API? So these things to consider. If you have a new optimization you pass, is at the right level? We have plenty, 2, 3 IRs. Anyway, for optimization, 2 IRs de facto. So should the optimization be at GIMP or the RTL? Should it be target specific? Those are all kind of high-level design questions you might ask. For those of us who work on back-end stuff, ABI is a big deal. So you don't want to violate the ABI. It's very painful for all kinds of people. Violate the ABI is important, so consider that. Particularly when you add command line options or user-facing things, actually asking whether LLVM or Clang is doing something similar there is important. It doesn't mean Clang or LLVM gets it right all the time, but for a lot of users, you generally want to have some kind of, you don't want to deviate unless really necessary. At least for those who enable CPUs, we want to have similar MCPU names, for example. Yeah. So consider those things, right?
I got a good one. Don't change, both compilers change behavior to the other one at the same time.
Yeah, the old switcheroo.
Yeah. And it was about to happen again until somebody pinged me saying, "Oh, in LVM, it was statement expressions. That's why I found the bug about statement expressions, was because the LVM guys ping me now for a lot of front-end stuff. Because I'm active, at least reading bugs, they know me enough to ping me. And then I was like, okay, I'll go through the history and try to figure out something.
Yep. So important thing to consider is extensibility, something we see in the backend quite a bit. If the new code is introduced, it would be straightforward to extend. So if you added a new cost hook or whatever, some CPU heuristic, will future CPUs be able to extend it easily, or will need to be refactor stuff again? So that's something we deal with quite a bit.
I would raise that maybe we don't have to focus so much on the design review, because those are big changes that involve a lot of people. And what it comes down to is that there's going to be a discussion between maintainers and the developer.
Well, it just depends how the impact for the patches. I mean, all patches have a design of some form, implicit or explicit, and not all patches attract attention from a lot of people.
But you're talking about things that might be extended, right? So it just kind of seems like bigger refactors, which I do care about. I'm going to be talking about that in my talk, but it doesn't seem, it becomes bigger discussions rather than simple reviews, right?
Yep.
You get as many people involved as possible.
Well, I mean, review can trigger a discussion. It could be a design discussion that hasn't been had, that should be had, right? Then implementation is a bit more low level. I find that a lot for new starters, a lot of that is more low hanging fruit. You focus on local things, maybe using the right APIs. For those of us who deal a lot with RTL, there's all kinds of implicit or explicit rules about how you should access RTL. Don't get the register number of the register RTL before you confirm that it's actually a register RTL. GC, I don't know if explicit or not, but de facto, doesn't like quadratic algorithms, so avoid those. There's all kinds of APIs. We have our own hash maps and vectors, so if we should be using those, make sure you're using those. The usual whatever thing we say in software engineering is code is usually read 100 times more often than it's written, so it's worth making sure the code is readable, self-documented as much as possible. You have the usual kind of software engineering principles. GC has asserts. I like asserts. You can use them to force certain invariants. And for those of you who understand how the garbage collection works, make sure you do all those markings. I usually can never get them right. I have to ask someone to tell me what they should be done. There you go. I have something about documentation. If you're introducing new stuff, make sure it's documented and test. Yeah, sorry.
I definitely agree with a lot of this. It's just making people aware of the correct way to do it, the expressive way to do it.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a very small thing of kind of stuff I deal with the backend, but there's all kinds of subsystems that have their own rules, best practice that I cannot comment on. So if we were to write them down, the experts would need to write them down.
I think this correlates to like the at least the C++ front end, at least very closely, like the regp versus get codex equals like that's exactly. I see it sometimes when looking at other people's patches where people just don't know something exists.
Oh, sorry.
I pointed out something to Richie that he didn't know existed. And he's like, and I misspelled. Problem is, when I committed it, when I added it, I had an extra S, but so he didn't think about looking anyways, for an example, even though there was a new API and everything for it. It was for the abnormal checking. Sorry, David.
Sorry. So can we go for 5 minutes more because we started late, or must we cut? Okay,
Yeah.
Can keep going.
When we started this, we were saying we need more reviewers.
Yeah.
But these slides you've been putting up, like making the review process look harder and harder and harder.
Well, no, I mean, well, as I said in the beginning, the problem I heard is that when I was trying to encourage people to review is they say, I don't know what to look for, I don't know what guidelines to follow, so I don't know how to review. So this is just stuff like that. As we were saying, this is not dogma, you can ignore it. If you already have an opinion, if you already know how to do reviews, maybe you've worked on other software that's not GCC compilers, maybe you already know how to do software review. So yeah, maybe you don't need these guidelines. But the people I've dealt with, they have nothing.
If I was a new person who'd never done a review before, and I saw all these slides, I'd be thinking, I'm not going to be able to do all of that.
So I think one of the things that I want to reiterate is positive reviews with explanations of what you see right in the code, even if you don't know, even if you're not in a position to say that I'm 100% sure about that. I know. That's why I just wanted to kind of quickly shortcut that. Right?
No, that's I agree.
Just make sure that you. So basically, what that does is it kind of gives a second set of opinion on what the code should be doing. Whether something is right or wrong is inconsequential at that point. It's basically getting the code to a point where it is understood by multiple people, and that's what the review is really all about.
Yep.
Just touching on what Nick said there a minute ago, this talk is kind of preaching to the choir. I'd say most of the people here are probably a good chunk of the reviewers. If this is documented somewhere and you have your flow chart, you could have stages of review. So if I'm a new reviewer, this is what you look at. As you get more experience, move on to this stage, and then the truly experienced people, they probably know already, but they go on to the last few stages. Kind of removes the daunting aspect of your first time doing it.
Yeah, as I was saying earlier, at the beginning, those who already review patches, and they don't need me to tell them how to do it. They have something that works for them. So this is more for people who don't know how to start. For those of you who do review and already have best practices, maybe the point of Zubov to think is to how many of those practices are documented, or whether you would like to make them explicit for others to follow. So yeah, testing review is something I think it's a bit even easier. Patches should be tested. We say that in the guidelines. One of those things we do actually say. The patch has not been, there is no statement how the patch has been tested. It's actually always okay to ask how has it been tested. Even if it's obvious, it should still be somewhere explicit written.
Yeah.
You don't actually have to bootstrap and test the patches themselves. If you want to, obviously helps. But if you're working on hardware you don't have access to, then you don't have to. If the submitter is fixing a bug or in a system that they don't actually have access to, they may ask for testing, and you can help there. Things about coverage. So as I said, people have mentioned if there's new features, things, there should be tests for it. If there's new options introduced that take arguments, make sure that there's a reasonable coverage of the various options. When you have machine description patterns, we usually use mode iterators to cover many modes. So, do you need types for every mode? Probably yes. For us in backends, we care about little big endian logic, and it confuses a lot of logic, a lot of stuff in the vectorizer. So, make sure there's tests for that. Sorry.
What's ND pattern?
Machine description pattern is the lingua franca of the machine description is the lingua franca of the backend.
As well, your slide says add test to test suite / But you said add test coverage. I just wanted to point out
self-tests.
that there's as well as having the Deja GNU test suite, we have the self-test thing, which might be more appropriate if you're like touching a data structure implementation inside the compiler, something where it's more unit testable rather than Deja GNU is more like kind of an integration-y kind of higher level. And so
Yep, you're right.
And we can now write tests for the garbage collector using the self-test framework. Which
I actually did not know that the self-test framework is a thing.
Well, there we go. I knew it was a thing, but I just forgot to write it in the slide.
Or at least adding coverage is great, and it may be most appropriate to add some of the coverage to add via the self-tests and some to add via Deja GNU. And exactly where that goes, it depends on what it is the patch is doing.
Yep. Performance testing is something a lot of us, working on processors, semiconductor stuff, care about a lot. Optimizations, it's a big deal. A lot of discussions about how you do benchmarking. I'm not gonna, give a primer on benchmarking, but patches that add stuff should make an argument for how to make code better. So sometimes the code is obviously better because you merge instructions into shorter instructions or whatever. You eliminate the instructions. So those probably don't need benchmarks to argue for them. A lot of these things, many optimizations are desirable from first principles. Others tweak heuristics, and whether desirable or not, depends on benchmark results. If it's such a code with heuristics, are the benchmark results, or is it an argument to be made why the heuristics are the way they are? That's something to verify. If you're really charitable, you can benchmark yourself, and Tomer, for example, ARM helps a lot with benchmarking for some of our patches. But that's one of the things to worry about. And Deja GNU directives, many people struggle with Deja GNU directives in new starters, especially. So getting those right, you can help with that.
We now have a DG Linux tool.
Oh, we do. Oh yeah, we do, don't we? Yeah. Yeah, we should advertise it a bit more. Once you have that, you compose a reply. If it's the first contribution, if you follow the list generally, you kind of see what a new name pops up. So thank them for the patch. It doesn't cost you anything, and but many people appreciate it. GC list likes inline replies, not top posting. I usually start with talking about the high-level design if I have anything to say about that, and proceed down to the low-level stuff. Some people mentioned, if the patch does something right, or if it's a really complex patch and you think, large parts of the patch are okay, it's fine to call them out. Say, yeah, this is really nice. I think I agree. This is correct. So all of that is good. There's no need to be. If you're not super confident about your objection, or if you're not exactly sure if there's a real problem, one trick I use is to phrase things as a question. Where I say, that's not right. I say, are you sure this is right? Maybe it should have been like this. Makes it easier for me psychologically to object to stuff. If the patch looks okay, you can say it looks good to me. You can say that you cannot approve. Couch it with as many disclaimers as you like. If it's good, you can. If you haven't gone through the whole patch, if you cannot vouch for the whole patch being good, you can just say that you've read it and you understood the patch. So at least something. We were discussed the code style only reviews. Opinions differ. I don't really feel strongly about it. At some point, the style will need to be fixed. So sooner or later, I personally like to roll them in with other more substantive code reviews, or if I'm approving a patch. And as I said, it's okay to make a wrong comment. If you get it wrong, there are the reviewers maintainers who probably will review it as well. There's all kinds of quality things that catch these problems. So
Just a quick anecdote. The thanking for the patch, it makes a big difference. Like, I'm pretty new around, and I gave a bug report in the past, and I was thanked for the detailed bug report, and that really motivated me to continue contributing. And then when I made my first patch, again, same thing. I was thanked for it. I think it was Jason who did. And it was a really big motivator to continue contributing.
There we go. And that's pretty much it. I mean, conclusion slide. We already had the discussion, so so if people obviously think it's a good idea, so I'll probably write something in Wiki because that's a safe thing to do. As I said, I may try to put some guidelines for what I think in the back end are kind of guidelines that we de facto follow. For those of you who review other important subsystems, you may want to contribute guidelines of your own. Maybe I'll discuss it on the list to see if we want to put that on the flow chart, formalize it or anything like that. I didn't really put a lot of thought in it or anything like that. It's just an illustration. But if people feel it's valuable to have a flow chart that guides these things, I can make something a bit more succinct.
It's a pretty good flow chart in my opinion.
Yeah, I like it.
Anybody would like to start the thread about the review by because that was a big discussion we had at the beginning.
I personally don't feel very strongly about it. I mean, I understand the value of it, but it's not the kind of thing I would probably drive consensus. But yeah, I'm in favor of it, weakly in favor of it. So if someone wants to drive it, yeah.
We probably are too few here to discuss.
The usual consensus problem.
So we can probably raise this in the steering committee for discussion, and then maybe hear the thoughts.
All right, yeah, I think we're bang on time now. Thank you.